a decade of great contrasts. World War I had ended in victory, and in Britain, peace had arrived.
For some it was an age of discovery, independence, broadcasting, cinema and jazz. But by the middle of the decade, the economy went from boom to bust, and in 1926 there was a general strike. In that same year was born a child who became a symbol of hope and stability in an age of uncertainty.
Alexander Mary Windsor was born on April 21st, 1926. She lived on 145 Piccadilly Road with the Duke and Duchess of York.
Elizabeth was a favourite with her grandfather, King George V, who she affectionately called Grandpa England.
In 1930, Elizabeth became a sister when Margaret Rose was born. The two children had lessons with the governess and spent the afternoons singing, dancing and playing outdoors.
Elizabeth was called Lilibet by her family. She was dutiful and orderly, but never expected to become the queen.
In 1936, King George V sadly died. Then his first son, Edward, abdicated and the crown was passed on to Elizabeth's father, who became King George VI.
Princess Elizabeth was now the heir to the throne and moved with her family to Buckingham Palace.
World War II broke out in September 1939. Many children were evacuated to safety, but the king decided not to send his daughters to another country.
Instead, the princesses spent most of the war years at Windsor Castle, and it was from here that Princess Elizabeth gave her first BBC broadcast, speaking to children who had been separated from their families.
Princess Elizabeth joined the Women's Auxiliary, Territorial Service and trained as a mechanic.
She wore her uniform on VE Day when she joined her family on the balcony at Buckingham Palace to celebrate the end of the war.
We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. Keep smiling through, just like you always do.
On her 21st birthday, Princess Elizabeth was abroad with her family on a tour of South Africa.
In a speech broadcast on the radio from Cape Town, she dedicated her life to the service of the Commonwealth. I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service. But I shall not have strength to carry out this resolution alone, unless you join in it with me. God help me make good my vow, and God bless all of you who are willing to share in it.
Princess Elizabeth first met Prince Philip of Greece at a family wedding in 1934 when she was just 8 years old. They met again in 1939 when he was a cadet at the Royal Naval College. Philip was very dashing and friendship turned into romance.
There was a royal engagement announced in July 1947 and 4 months later the handsome couple were married at Westminster Abbey.
In 1952, King George VI was frail. His doctor told him that he was not strong enough to go on tour of the Commonwealth, so it was decided that Princess Elizabeth and Prince Philip should go instead.
Whilst in Kenya, the royal couple headed for treetops, a treehouse which had been turned into a hotel. In awe and silence, they gazed at wild animals gathering at the waterhole beneath them.
The Queen excitedly filmed African elephants with her cine camera. Little did she know, over 4,000 miles away, her father, the king, sadly passed in his sleep. The princess who climbed up treetops came down the next day as queen. The coronation of Queen Elizabeth II took place at Westminster Abbey on June 2nd, 1953. Despite grey skies, London was bathed in ceremonial splendour and the streets were filled with thousands of people cheering and waving flags. Through the gates of Buckingham Palace came the gold state coach taking the young queen to her crown.
At the Abbey, Elizabeth took the coronation oath and was clothed in the imperial robe. She received the sovereign's orb, royal sceptres, and the coronation ring made of sapphire and ruby.
Then came the splendid moment when the crown of St. Edward was placed on her head and she was crowned queen.
God save the Queen! God save the Queen! God save the Queen!
This year, we celebrate Queen Elizabeth's Platinum Jubilee.
She is the longest reigning monarch in British history. Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor was the pride of her parents and then became a devoted wife, mother, queen, grandmother and great-grandmother.
Throughout this ever-changing life, she has dedicated herself to the service of others and led with fortitude, wisdom, vision and joy.